among screenwriters, what a lot of new writers don't get is that the frustration that they're experiencing, it never goes away. That's the way it operates at the highest levels for the most successful practitioners. You don't need to be a tenured college professor to know that it's better to be rich than poor. But of course, to be a wealthy, successful writer is better than being an impoverished, unsuccessful one. But both of those, the impoverished, unsuccessful one and the very successful, wealthy one, will have the same frustration, the same disappointment, the same issues involving fulfillment. It ain't easy for anybody.
Sure, and the insurance salesman that yearns to write but doesn't because he wants to keep a mortgage and his kids in school, that would probably be more of a frustration because...
Well, you know, there's no reason that insurance salesman can't write. If it's important to him to write, he can write. He can't sit down at the desk. I'm very privileged. I have my duties here on campus, but I have many days that I don't have to come in at all, and I work out of my office at home where I write, and I can just write the whole day, but I don't write the whole day. I write about 2 or 3 hours. There's no reason a salesman can't set aside an hour to write. He's just going to go more slowly. I like to tell writers, imagine, you're saying you don't have enough time to write. Nobody has enough time to write. Stephen King doesn't have enough time to write. There's not a writer who will tell you he has enough time to write. Yet, supposing you went to bed an hour later every night, that would liberate 2 months of writing time. I'm talking about not around the clock, but just a 40-hour, 5-day week. You would get, if you had another 365 hours available, which is what you'd have if you went to sleep an hour later every night. That would give you 2 months to write in the year that you haven't used yet, in addition to whatever else you're doing. Now, maybe you couldn't write a screenplay in 2 months, although maybe you could. Our students here have to in 10 weeks. But you could certainly write a big chunk of it. Well, supposing you say, well, I already go to bed too late. I can't go to bed an hour later. Well, why don't I go to bed 15 minutes later? Get up 15 minutes earlier. Couldn't you manage that? That would, if you could do that over a year, that would give you a month of writing time. So you do have the time. The problem is you don't have the will. You're up against what I think his name is Stephen Pressler. There's a book called The War of Art. It's a play on the art of war, and it's a pamphlet. It's a very light piece. You could read it while you're waiting for the light to change, but it's brilliant. It is brilliant. And what Pressler talks about, boy, I hope I'm getting the name right. Pressfield. Thank you, Stephen Pressfield. What he calls it is resistance, that there's this resistance sitting there and you just have to face it and you have to do it. And you have to stop trying to like it. Somebody was telling people, a client of mine, when I say client, I mean a writer whom I'm giving notes to on a script. What he's giving me is a lot of money. I mean, I charge big fees to do this. It takes me away from my own work. I love to get this kind of work. Even better not to get it. But the point is, this guy was writing back to me. He's just about ready now to start he's gone over the notes, he's thought everything through, and he's about to start the actual rewrite. And he's just miserable contemplating actually getting into the rewrite. And I said to him, I'm glad to hear it. Why am I glad to hear that he's miserable? Because it tells me that he's having the experiences that a real writer would have. Only an amateur, Pressfield would put it this way, only an amateur would say that she or he can't wait to get into the rewrite, is delighted contemplating getting up in the morning and working on that script. the contrary is the case, dreading it. I had a guest in my class, a very famous writer. As we're in the Hollywood community here, and we're a pretty prestige operation, and lots of real. I mean, I had Neil Simon come in here and talk about comedy. We had 30 years ago Tennessee Williams come in and speak. I mean, that's like being in seminary and having a Q&A with God. So there was a very famous writer, very successful but admired writer in my class, and I gave him a copy of my screenwriting book, and he, just as a little present to thanking him for coming in, and he got in touch with me a few days later, and he said he thought that Coles to Newcastle, what is he going to do with a screenwriting book? He's a very well established writer, and that was pretty arrogant of me to give him this book. He said, nevertheless, he opened up the book, and one of my first principles is that the real writers hate to write. All writers who are serious writers, they don't like to write. We love having written, but actually writing is always painful. Is it good enough? I thought yesterday what it was. Now I'm rereading it, and it's not as good as I remember, and so on. And very, very frustrating. Do I dare show this to anybody? How can I expect people to, in exchange for this, give me money so I can put orthodontia on my children's teeth and so on? This guy said to me, it was such a liberation to read, for him to read that all writers hate to write, and to discover that he's not the only one who doesn't leap from his bed in the morning, with bells on, eager beyond description to get into his writing. No, we all want to put it off, delay it, defer it. It's that way for everybody.